Speaker, for the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask for unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of the House Res. 419. The rule provides for consideration of 2 separate but related bills. H.R. 2250, the EPA Regulator Relief Act of 2011, and H.R. 2681, the Cement Sector Regulator Relief Act of 2011. I'm proud to sponsor this rule, which provides for a modified open amendment process with a pre-printing requirement. This modified open rule means that any member, Republican or Democrat, with any germane amendment that complies with the other rules of the House will have the opportunity to debate that issue. It's another example of Republicans' majority's continued commitment to transparency. Mr. Speaker, since coming to this body back in January, my priority has been to create an environment where American workers can prosper. In my home district, unemployment hovers around 13%. I don't doubt this sad statistic is part of the reason that Vice President Biden is in my district today, talking up the President's so-called American Jobs Act. Unfortunately for thousands of people looking for work in Florida's 5th Congressional District, they can't afford for the President and Vice President to just keep talking about it. They need action, not promises. They need to actually break down the barriers that are preventing job creators and employers from creating new jobs. Every week when I go home, I meet with small business owners and to get their input on what they need to start hiring again. They always tell me the same 3 things. We need demand from customers. Loans aren't as easy to come by as they were prior to the recession. And they have no idea what to expect from Washington as it relates to regulation and taxes. Washington can't directly control the first 2 things, but can absolutely take care of the third. One of the businesses, when we did a balanced budget amendment rally in Dade City, one of the small business owners stood up and said, what we need is certainty from the federal government. We need certainty that what our taxes are going to be and what regulations are going to be. He talked about the fact that regulations change on a moment's notice based upon whims of the government. He used to plan 3 to 5 years out in regards to what their business plan was going to do, what their hiring process was going to be. Today, they're lucky if they can plan 90 days based upon the uncertainty. And so long as 2/3 of the Americans in this country think that we're on the wrong track, they're going to stay hunkered down, waiting for signs that things are improving. The American people need to believe that we're putting this economy back on track, back towards growth and prosperity, and you do that through leadership. There are currently 219 regulations under considerations. Each of those regulations separately will cost us $100 million. That's $21.9 billion in increased regulations on businesses today that are already crushed because they can't compete. And what's more, there's over 4,226 new regulations in the hopper. With that many regulations costing that much money hanging over their heads, how on earth can we expect small businesses to actually create jobs? You know, today in the House, we have the ability to address some of these executive rules, all promulgated by the EPA. Those rules, collectively known as Boiler Act, Cement Act, put thousands of jobs in my district in jeopardy. For the life of me, I can't understand how the Vice President can stand up in front of citizens of Land O'Lakes, Florida, talking about job creation with a straight face, when the Obama administration is actively pursuing regulations like Boiler Act and Cement Act. In my district alone, My district alone, Cement Mac rule could cost up to 200 cement manufacturing jobs, not adding into the total of jobs that are going to be lost on the associated industries that move it, sell it, and use it. You know, additionally, numerous groups and industries have made it clear that Boiler Mac regulations will cost them hundreds of millions of dollars and will put many of their employees in the unemployment line. And yet, our president ignores these regulations and keeps talking about doubling down on a second stimulus, following the failed first stimulus package. Well, here we are today, doing something to actually save jobs, not just talking about it. One of the very first actions I took as a member of Congress was to invite the EPA to come to my office and explain to me their finalized rules in respect to Portland cement manufacturing that goes on in my district. You know, they said to me, we understand it's not without challenge to the industry. You know, I may not have been here long, but I know Washington doublespeak when I hear, well, it's not about additional challenges to that industry. It's not just the Cement Mac rule that's not without challenge, Mr. Speaker. You know, my colleague, Mr. Hastings, wrote a letter to the EPA about 2 months ago, and I commend him for this letter. In it, he says, the Boiler Mac rule alone can impose tens of billions, that's billions of dollars in capital costs at thousands of facilities across this country. My colleague from Florida asked the EPA to consider a more flexible approach that could prevent severe job losses and billions of dollars in unnecessary regulatory cost. In Florida alone, Boiler Mac will affect at least 43 boilers requiring $530 million in retrofits. You know, I just heard from Florida Sugar Industry that they estimate Boiler Mac for their compliance alone will cost $350 million and cost untold jobs. I've heard from the pulp and paper workers who they may need to lay off 87,000 workers if this Boiler Mac regulation goes into place. I've heard from timber producers in my district that have recently been hurt because U.S. plywood producers have had to close because of lack of demand. And now they're fearful they may have to deal with the double whammy that Boiler Mac is going to do in regards to putting businesses out of work and close them down. It could crush one of the last outlets for their timber products. You know, Representative Hastings, in his letter to the EPA, said this, and I quote, "I believe that regulations can be crafted in a balanced way that sustains both environment and jobs. I believe these bills, H.R. 2250 and H.R. 2681, make that balanced and makes that balancing possible. These bills don't completely eliminate clean air emission regulations for boilers and incinerators or cement kilns, but what they do is require the agency to create regulations that actually take achievable science into account. They give effective industry time to comply. In some, they make the EPA think about the American workforce. Mr. Speaker, and in an environment where job creation is a key, I don't see how we can't support that. With that, I encourage my colleagues to vote yes on the rule, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Nugent reserves his time. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Hastings.